So, Before Sunset. This movie, I am not a big crier at films, right? I can't even remember the last time I cried at a movie since I was like after the age of like 10 or something like that. In the last like 11 years, I can't remember the last time I've cried at a movie. I teared up a little bit at Before Sunrise, but I wasn't like, full on crying or anything. Before Sunset had me fucking bawling. I was in shambles. I was crying so goddamn hard. Okay. So the movie's like 80 minutes long, and we're like, huh? Okay, let me get into it. Okay. So Before Sunrise, Sunset. How do I keep messing these up? So Before Sunset takes place about 9 or 10 years later, right? Let's just say, to keep the numbers clean, 10 years later. Every single one of these movies was filmed and so every single one of them takes place in basically the year that it was filmed. And were all filmed approximately 10 years apart. Before Sunset is the characters 10 years later. And now, the first movie had an ambiguous ending. And it's funny because in many ways, so the opening of Before Sunset is Jesse is now an accomplished author. He's written a book about the night in Vienna that he and Celine spent with each other. And it's called like This Way or something like that. He's written a book. It's massively successful. And he's in Paris at a little bookstore on the last stop of his publicity tour. And it opens, and he's talking to, people are just asking him interview questions. And in many ways, the questions that they're asking are responses or commentary to the discussion around the ending of the first movie. So they're asking him questions like, do you think that they met up at the train station again? Did they meet up again? What do you think? This or that. And he's basically saying like a lot of the common, I guess, like discussion around it is like, well, it depends on your outlook. Like, you think they're just dumb kids and they're gonna forget about it, or do you think that they had something real and they actually did show up? And this whole time, I am. You don't know what's going on, right? You're just seeing Jesse 10 years later. You've got no context besides what you're seeing right now. And I'm like, okay, so what did happen, right? Like I am chomping at the bit. I'm like, well, now that we're here, I want to find out what happened, right? I would have been perfectly happy if the first movie just ended and there was never another one. But if we're here, I'd like to know. So he's going. And then he looks over and he sees in the bookstore, he sees Celine. And from his reaction, you can tell that like, well, they haven't seen each other in a while. So, so he finishes giving the interview. He finishes the last question. He gets up, he talks to his publicist, and he goes like, hey, there's someone, I just saw someone I was thinking like we might like just hang out for a bit. That's cool, right? Like we're on, is that I can fit that in the schedule? And his publicist basically says like, all right, fine, but you got to be at the airport by 7:30 at the latest, at the absolute latest, right? AKA sunset. So that's the new time limit for the movie. Is he meets with Celine, and they're like, dude, how have you been, right? And they're now in, I want to say they were in their early 20s in the first movie. So now they're like 31 or something like that. Yeah, I think literally they're about 31 in this movie. 30, 31, 32, something like that. And they meet and they're like, dude, like what's up? Like, how have you been? And they start doing the thing. They start walking and talking. And I'm like, okay, so this is going to be the new time limit, is Before Sunset. He's got to catch his plane. And, something, whatever. The plot's going to work its way to that point before, I'm assuming, they have to say goodbye. And this is a really curious movie. The film is 80 minutes long. It's really short. There's videos on on my channel that are longer than Before Sunset, right? And so they're walking around Paris, and they're talking, and at first, it's okay, so the first things first out of the way, they just catch up really quickly, right? Like, like all that first stuff, and then, like, a couple minutes in their conversation, Celine stops, and she goes, okay, I have to know. Did you show up in Vienna? And, dude, I gasped. I went, oh, no fucking way. Did they both flake out? I'm like, oh. And Jesse, he just kind of looks around and he's just, did I show up in Vienna? And he's you know, kind of looking around, and I'm like, oh no, they both fucking missed. And it's just one of those things you gotta fuck, dude, they actually missed the date. Fuck, dude. And I'm just sitting, like it was me, you know? Like it was like it's me with this regret. You're like, fuck. And he's like, you know, like things happened, and she goes, oh, okay. All right, I'm okay. I'm relieved, right? I'm relieved. And then he stops and he goes, wait. No, wait, what the fuck? Hang on. Let me pull up the Wikipedia page for it, because the conversation happens in this really specific way. Let's see. Okay. So Celine asks, oh yeah, okay, so Celine asks him, like, well, why, what was your reason? Like, why didn't you come back? No, so basically she says, like, oh, I'm so sorry, yeah, like, I didn't show up, my grandmother died, like 2 days before, or my grandmother died like a week before the date, right before December 16th, which was when they were going to meet back up, and the funeral was on that day, and she's like, you know, what was I supposed to do? And it's like, oh yeah, I don't blame you, it's whatever, dude, like, that's important. And then she asks him, why didn't you show up? And he just kind of stutters, and he just kind of looks around, and she's like, oh my fucking god. She's like, you did show up, didn't you? And he's like, yeah, I did show up. He did totally. And that kind of like, the relief I felt when he says that he showed up at Vienna on the date was, you couldn't believe. I was like, oh, okay. It's like, yeah, so he did show up. He spent all this money to show up, and then was just, you know, heartbroken, and they're just having a conversation, and she's like, oh my god, I'm so fucking, you know, and they're like, why didn't we fucking exchange phone numbers or something? Like, that's so stupid. And they're just talking like they're 31-year-old adults who haven't seen each other in 10 years and had like a missed connection. And it's so fucking real. And they're walking and talking, and it's one of those shots, one of those, again, we go back to these long, it's so similar in style to the original, in a good, that's a good thing. These long tracking shots of them just walking down a street, and it's just the camera's on them, and they're just walking and talking and talking. And there's just these little things, like at one point, like Celine starts talking, like Jesse's done talking, and it kind of passes off to Celine, and she starts talking, and he like looks over at her, and you can just kind of like see him just sort of like look her up and down for like 1 second, right? And it's just that look where he's just like, huh, okay. And it's just like this subtle thing that like everyone's done. Everyone's done. He just, okay, he just checks her out for like half a second, like a split second. Just this like subtle little natural movement, and just this stuff happens. They go to a coffee shop, they're talking, and then they walk through a park, and to this point in the movie, after we kind of got the big question out of the way of like, well, did they show up? You know, now that that's out of the way and it's kind of put to rest, and they're both over it, honestly. Like, they're both like, it's been years, right? It's been years. They're so over it. And and they're walking and they're talking, and the conversation it's good. Like, they're great actors. The dialogue it's so good. Everything that was good about all the dialogue in the first movie is just as good here. But in the first movie, it's weird, right? There's something strange about it. There's something missing. And in the first movie, it's very obvious what's going on, right? It's very obvious, like, they're falling in love. And it's just a delight to watch happen on screen. In this movie, I'm like, there's a portion of the movie in the middle where I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, where's this going? Like, it's a little bit meandering, right? And there's little hints here and there. There's new details about their lives that you're just, okay. You find out, Jesse's married, you know? Jesse's married. He's got this kid. He loves his kid so much. His name is Henry, or Hank. So weird that Hank is a nickname for Henry, right? But he's got this kid he loves. And she asks him, how's your wife? What she do? And he goes, she's nice and pretty and she's a good teacher and she's a good mom and all that. And like, you can just tell immediately, like, he's not super happy with the marriage. And then, I don't know. And then there's like this bit, right, where I'm like, what are we doing? Like, where are we really going? You know, what's this all building up to? Obviously, the first one's building up to them being in love. I don't get what this is exactly doing, because, like, obviously what you would imagine is, they're going to fall back in love, right? They're going to rediscover each other or something. But the more you get deeper into it, you're like, is that really happening? Like, is that where this is going? You've got no idea. And the movie feels a little, again, meandering. And then, you know, there's a bit where, the whole movie, interestingly enough, takes place in about the span of an afternoon and I think, roughly takes place in real time. I read that on the IMDb or the Wikipedia or something like that. Like, it's about an 80-minute period that the film actually takes place in. With maybe a little bit of jump, like a minute or two of jumps, right? And, there's a second thing that happens where they're walking by the riverway, and, you know, he asks her, like, how you doing? Like, you dating someone? And she says, so she's working now as like she's like an environmental activist. That's her thing. So she goes around, she does all this like charitable work, she does this volunteering stuff, and she feels really great. And you can totally see, excuse me, how she got there from the first movie, right? That's a neat thing, is you can see how both characters got to the point that they're at from the first movie, right? Like Celine, she just seems like an ambitious person in Before Sunrise. She seems like an ambitious person who cares about the world, and she just doesn't know quite what she wants to do, and she's gonna like find something that means a lot to her. And Jesse, he's this very lost guy who's kind of like he feels like he's really on his own and trying to like strike it out for himself, but he's very articulate, and he has all these like really like fanciful ideas. Like, he's actually a really creative person when you watch that first movie. He's got all these really creative ideas and very like poetic ways that he'll describe experiences and things like that. And you can totally see like how he turned into like a writer or someone who like found a medium to express himself, right? And that's cool. And they never like have to bring it up. It's just like, oh yeah, these are two people with like, this is their life path. So she's talking and she goes, yeah, so I'm she's dating this war photographer. She's dating this war photographer, and he asks her, he's like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And she's talking about it. She's like, oh yeah, no, he's great. But he's gone all the time. He'll be gone for 6 months. And I'm always worried about him. And he says I shouldn't be worried. And he's in war zones. And I don't know, just sometimes I feel a little, she implies there's some distance between them, right? Like she's talking about how there's this experience where they were walking down the street or something and they saw this homeless person, and her boyfriend, I don't think ever gets named, had to take a picture of this person. But he didn't just take a picture of them. He like went up and he describes how he was like adjusting this person's like their collar and stepping back and like taking a picture. So it was like the most the most appealing picture of human misery that it could possibly be, almost. And she describes how it was weird, and it was almost like he was disconnected. And Jesse's like, "Oh, it's kind of weird. Did that bother you?" And she goes, "Oh, I mean, no, like he does important work." And she kind of like changes the subject, and you can sort of feel that there's a dissatisfaction, right? There's a dissatisfaction a little bit in the both of them. All we're seeing is just one day in their lives, but you can, the way that they talk about these things and the changes in their lives, there's just this stuff that they're not happy with entirely, but they're not like lament. It's not this dramatic big fucking thing, right? So they get on this boat, and just on spur of the moment, they get on a boat and they're going to take it down to a port, and then the Jesse's driver is going to pick him up, take him to the airport. They have this conversation, and then they get there, and they get to the car, and he's like, "You know, we can at least drive you home, right? Like, we can at least give you a ride home." And she's like, "Oh, no, I can take the train or something." He's like, no. So you're like, okay. All right, you know, like he doesn't want to stop. They don't want to stop talking. And they get in this car. And after they get into the car, all of this meandering and all this kind of like where is this going? Once they get into the car, that's real. I guess when I'd say the third act begins, because that's everything after that is like everything that you haven't even realized has been building up throughout this movie just fucking explodes. And in this like one scene, both of them go from like they're just having a pleasant conversation, and then once they're kind of done just talking about all these pleasant things in their life, Celine just starts, I don't know, like something happens, and she mentions how, she read his book and it brought up a lot of unpleasant feelings, and she just kind of starts going and going and going, and eventually starts wrapping around to how in her life she's had so many bad relationships. There's so many bad relationships with men, and she feels like she has to create this kind of distance between her and them, and that experience, that one night with Jesse in Vienna was like the one time. It was like the one time that like everything was good, and she was like, "Fuck, this was like the one, right? This was like the one," and it just fucking slipped out of her hands. Not out of, for things kind of out of her control. And is she on it? And, it gets much bigger than that. Like, she's on the verge of tears, and she's yelling. So they're all fucking, they get in this kind of argument. And then Jesse says, like, fucking, I'm having a rough time too. And he's really does not fucking love his wife. And he mentioned, like, I think he, like, the only reason they're married is because, like, they were just sort of on again, off again, and then she got pregnant, and they got married. And he even, like, says earlier in the film, like, he kind of just married her because, well, she got pregnant, and he figured, like, well, a man has to commit. That's what I got to do. It's, I have to commit. I did this, and now I have to be responsible and take responsibility for it. And he's ended up in this sort of weird situation where he's got this wife he really doesn't love, but this kid he fucking adores, and he loves with all his heart. And they sort of realize in this conversation that, like, they both have shit going on. Their lives, neither of their lives are at the start of the movie. It's like that layer of magic. It gets slowly peeled away. They meet up, right? And it's like, "Oh, dude, what's going on with you?" And, everyone does this. You talk to people about what you're doing, and everything seems so cool when you just spell it out, when you just say literally what you're doing. "Oh, you're a writer. You've got this fucking best-selling book. That's so awesome. You're married. You have a kid." Like, you would think he's got it made, right? On paper, he should be super happy. And Celine, she's doing what she wants. She has this partner with a really important, like, cool job, and she lives in Paris and all this shit. And she lives in this, like, gorgeous little commune. Not a commune, but it's like this apartment complex. This old Parisian buildings with these gardens and this greenery everywhere. just absolutely gorgeous. And she's fucking, like, miserable on the inside. Because there's this thing with both of them that hasn't really been fulfilled. There's this kinship that's never really been, that's never been satisfied for either of them. That they only found in each other in that one night. And and it's this big fucking thing, and it turns from this giant argument. Man, the driver must have been so awkward. He must have felt so awkward in the front seat. And then they kind of cool down, and it's out of their systems a little bit. And so they get to her place. They get out of the car, and he's walking. He's like, I can walk you to your place. He just keeps finding more excuses. And you know where the fuck this is going, right? There's no other way that this can end, right? He walks her to her place, and she says, and it's this gorgeous place. It's this everything was shot on location in Paris. This gorgeous complex of like the apartment buildings, this old Parisian architecture and gardens. They walk in the courtyard, and there's all her fucking environmentalist friends hanging out and like cooking stuff, and she says hi, and it's like this little community and that she's carved out for herself. And they're like, oh, we're gonna have some tea. They go up to her room, right? And she makes him some tea. And she's talking about how she no, this is beforehand. She's talking about how she makes music, right? She makes music. And he's like, oh, you gotta sing me a song. You have to sing me a song. And oh god. She's like, oh, I feel really embarrassed. He's like, do it. It's just me. I'm not gonna laugh at you. Come on. And she takes out her guitar, and she sings this beautiful, beautiful, sweet little song. It's called, I think it's called A Waltz for a Night. And it's about their night in Vienna. It's about this beautiful little one night stand. And there's this bit where she says this person's name, Jesse, in the song, and it cuts to him, and he laughs. He's like, oh my god, are you fucking serious? And I was getting teary-eyed. I think I felt a tear roll down my cheek, right? And he starts clapping when she's done, and she's like, oh, whatever, I fucking... And she gets up to make him tea. And as she's making it, he goes and he gets up, and he goes to her, like, wall of CDs. This takes place in 2004, I should mention. Say it's 2004, right? Goes up to her wall of CDs, and he picks out an album, Nina Simone CD, and he puts it in, and it's Nina Simone doing her jazz singer thing, and they're talking, oh my god, can you believe she's already gone? Oh my god, she was great. And Jessie sits down in this fucking super reclined chair that she's got in her apartment. And while the tea is heating up, Celine starts talking about how she saw Nina Simone in concert, and how awesome she was, and how she was so spontaneous, and she starts imitating her, and how she would like stop in the middle of a song and she'd start doing a little walk, and she's doing this very exaggerated kind of hip swaying walk, and she would look over at people and go, oh hey baby, at the microphone, or at the holding someone on the lights or something like that, and she's just imitating her. and she's just doing this, this little Nina Simone. She brings him his tea, and she, she's still doing this little impression of her. And she starts doing this funny little dance, just this little hip sway dance, imitating how Nina Simone would walk. And it cuts back to Jesse, and this huge smile just spreads over his face. for like a second. And I'm just reading into this, right? We don't know what's going on in the characters' heads. I'm just reading into this. But it's almost like you're seeing Jesse, and he's realizing that for the first time in 10 years, everything feels okay. And everything feels all right. It's all normal. And it's just him and Celine in a room talking. And she's just and she's just doing this little dance. And like, that's the moment. In my mind, that's the moment that he decides that, like, fuck, there's no other way that this is gonna go, you know? That's when he decides he's gonna change his entire life. And she looks at him and she goes, baby, you're gonna miss that plane. And it cuts back to him. And I rewatched this scene again, right? And for like a second, he just kind of like thumbs his wedding ring. He just kind of rubs it for a second. And he goes, I know. And the most complicated smile appears on his face. It's like this incredible like joy. It's like a smile of relief, because he knows exactly what's going to happen in the future. Basically, he knows what's gonna. This whole movie, you're waiting for him to divorce his bitch wife and end up with Celine. and now he knows what you know. And he realizes that, like, yeah, it's gonna suck, but I know exactly where my life has to go now. I am no longer rudderless. I understand. Are you... What the fuck? My neighbors are playing music really loud outside. And then it cuts back to Celine, and she's still just doing the little funny dance. This whole thing, everything I've just described takes place over the course of like 10 seconds. And and then the movie just fades to black with this Nina Simone song playing in the background. And I fucking lost my shit crying. I lost my shit crying. And Kat looked at me and she was on the verge of tears. And when she saw me, she started crying. And it's beautiful. It's genuinely one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. Like I was looking. Man. I cannot fucking believe. I know the Oscars are a sham, right? But to further that point, neither Ethan Hawke nor Julie Delpy were nominated for Best Actor, or Actress for this film, or the previous one, or the next one. We're gonna get to that in a second. Neither of them, and it's like you took these two characters and this. So Kim Krizan, the first movie was like co-written by Linklater and Kim Krizan. Kim Krizan left, and she's not on the second or third movie, but the second and third movies were written collaboratively between Linklater, Hawke, and Julie Delpy, by all three of them. And it's in many ways a character study, right? It's in many ways a character study that's written by both the director / writer and the actors, the characters. It's so rare to see two people so completely become these characters. They're not even characters. They're like these people. Like I completely believe in this, like, in this almost fairy tale, fantastical. What would I even call it? Like scenario that they really are Jesse and Celine, that they really are them. Just fucking, just great. And Kat told me that after that, that's probably one of her favorite movies right now, or of all time now. And yeah, no, that's totally fair. I usually don't rank, like, I feel like I've never watched enough movies to say what my favorites are. I can just give movies I really like, but this, I can say this is a damn good movie. A damn good movie. And it's so short, right? It's so short. And I'm not even thinking about the time limit. And I read a comment from someone who was saying that they saw this on when it opened, right? Back in 2004. And they knew that it was like 80 minutes going in. They'd probably seen it on like a program or something like that. And they were like, how are they going to make a satisfying ending to it? Like, the movie's running out of time. And then the last 10 minutes is like the most beautiful thing I've ever fucking seen. It's some of the most beautiful character writing and acting I've ever seen in anything ever. And it brought me to tears. I fucking never cry at shit. I never do. Right? Not because things don't move me or things don't make me sad, but it's just not a normal thing for me. And this did, you know? I don't pride myself on like, oh, I never cry and stuff. It's just how I am. It's just how I express emotion, I guess. Absolutely incredible film. Incredible film. I could not recommend it enough. Watch the first two. Like watch both of them like in yeah, I don't know. You could probably, the funny thing is you could probably watch any of them on their own or in sequence, and I think it would work.